What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what's going on with Joe Biden, the overall market right now, from tickers like SPY to the Nasdaq to SPX to the Nvidia stock and Apple stocks. I'm going to break down what's going on with OPEC Plus, what tickers may impact the whole market, and what's going on with Tesla's inventory levels and what the news is saying about Tesla and how this could affect the share price moving forward. Before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed up to 10 free stocks, and any could be a free Tesla share. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Alright, Tesla was up 3.11% for the day, holding up quite nicely overall. I told you guys that we have this resistance zone between 217 to 217.83. That's where Tesla rejected right in that zone. But if we broke it, we could have gone all the way up to 220, but we failed to do so. As a result, Tesla started to slow down as the day went on Friday. And Tesla got a bearish cross on the PPO for the 1 hour time frame, which is still favoring the bears a bit. But we could see an increase in volatility first before we start to see more bearish price action, depending on how the market moves tomorrow, depending on what the data tells us that's coming out in the morning. So what data is coming out? To start us off, we have some earnings coming out. We have Fusion Fuel, GitLab, which is not too significant. For Tuesday, we have Dave and Buster's, Casey's, and just a couple of others. We have Campbell's and GameStop's for earnings that are coming out for Wednesday. And finally, we have Thursday, which has DocuSign and Neo for Friday. Nothing is too significant. I'm going to be watching Neo and GameStop the most. Those are two of the biggest ones. But besides that, nothing too huge. For Monday, the PMI report is coming out from the services sector. This should cause a very big increase in volatility at the first 15 minutes after the market opens. We're going to have the PMI report. That's going to be important. Then we have the services PMI coming out later on from the ISM at 10 o'clock a.m. This is going to give us a good idea of how the market is, or the economy, not just the markets, but the economy is contracting. And this is oftentimes data that's important for recessionary indicators. The recent PMI report that came out last week was showing signs of economic contraction from the manufacturing side. We're going to find out more from the services side going into this week. The market's going to respond to this, so make sure you expect lots of volatility during the first 15 and 30 minutes of the day. So get ready for that. On top of that, some big news came out on Saturday that Joe Biden has signed the debt ceiling bill. This was technically what the market was waiting for, but do I consider this good or bad news? That's up to you to decide. But the market has already decided that they liked the news and it pumped approaching this news. The market knew Biden was going to do this. And the question is this going to become a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event? The odds greatly favor that looking at the technicals, but I want to remain open minded by looking at particular levels. However, now that the news is out, there's an increased probability that the market may slow down going into tomorrow. With that said, we had some new news that came out from OPEC Plus. The Saudis are going to be cutting production starting in July, and they're going to be sticking to their oil production targets as they're going to be more voluntary cuts. Moving forward, they announced that they're going to continue to do this based off what's going on in the U.S. economy, the macroeconomic environment, and what's happening all over the world. They mentioned that there's going to be a tighter outlook of supply for oil during the second half of the year, which could lead to more increases. As a result, the current macroeconomic environment and inflationary concerns are causing them to potentially cut some of their production. However, what's very important about this is this will not only impact the US markets, but the global markets and potentially different sectors that are heavily involved in oil. So it's going to affect transportation, right? The different transports, consumer discretionaries, other stocks out there. And the list goes on. And this could have a big effect on inflation. Not a guarantee it's going to be like that massive, but it is a big possibility because of the ripple effect it could have. And this could be a little bit concerning for the markets, so please be very careful when news like this comes out. But as far as Tesla goes, we had 164 million in volume, well above average. The short volume relative to the price is still high as we saw shorts get squeezed. 66% short volume relative to price, and we just saw what happened to the shorts. And the price price ratio is still very elevated as Tesla has been outperforming the markets. And finally, moving forward, if you look at the seasonality from a daily basis, Tesla tends to be green about 53% of the time on Mondays, but it tends to cool off more on those Tuesdays. 51% of the time it's only green on Tuesdays. Once again, it tends to do better during the second, I would say maybe closer to the third hour, and then also during the fifth hour of every single trading day tend to be Tesla's best hours. Besides those hours, Tesla tends to slow down by the end of the day. That's what typically happens, not always. June tends to be a good month for Tesla. However, 78.57% of the time historically, Tesla tends to be green on during the month of June. That's a good sign for Tesla, as Tesla has some good reports that typically come out. What else is interesting is we saw another big surge in Tesla short interest. We saw about 55 million of the Tesla shares shorted just as of Friday. That's a crazy high amount of Tesla shares being shorted. This is the highest short interest on Tesla in months since we were very close to February. We've never seen this many Tesla shares being shorted, and this could be very significant for Tesla moving forward. Now, the shorts could cause Tesla to drop just a bit, but at the same time, Tesla has potential to squeeze even more. I'd be very careful because they could have been thinking of a plan to let Tesla and the market run up so they could reposition, then start dragging the market down a little bit afterwards. That's a real possibility. And that's a risk. So I'd be very careful. We'll have to wait and see what levels end up showing for the markets, but I'd be very concerned because of what's happening to the Nasdaq. Now, all these crazy lines right here are showing us the listings for Tesla's inventory levels. As you can see, as of recent, the Model X has been seeing a nice decline, just quite a bit, but this is not one of the more significant ones. The Model S also a slight decline, which is kind of good for Tesla, but the most significant one is going to be both the Model Y and then the Model 3. The Model Y inventory levels are very low compared to the others as it's getting bought up like crazy, but the Model 3 is still a little bit concerning. We're still seeing inventories soar to the upside, and they're very, very high. Overall, if you look at all of the inventories, they dropped quite a bit in May, just a little bit, but they started to surge up as we approached the June period for the past week and a half. I'd be a little bit cautious approaching earnings when this tends to happen. We want to see this start to drop very hard, especially after the EV tax credit qualifications of the Model 3. And I'm really hoping we start to see this drop more because if it drops more, it's going to be a lot better for Tesla's earnings. And I'm going to be more optimistic, of course. I'm not trying to say anything objectively about it. We have to wait for the data to come out first. I'm still very optimistic, of course, but if there are too many Model 3s that are making like backlogs and the inventory levels just keep piling up, that's not good news for Tesla. And that's one thing they really need to improve at. Besides that, the Model Y is still doing very well, and their other models are doing all right, but they're not as significant as the 3 and the Y. Those make up the majority of their sales. Model Y is doing well, so that's good, but the Model 3 still a little bit concerned. Look at the red line, it's still trending up very hard. We want to see more sales. Tesla has to do more, and hopefully the tax credits could help out with that. Now, finally, I'm just going to briefly break down some charts. What am I seeing for the markets? Well, whoops, sorry about that, guys. Looking at the markets, let me just add that for SPY, okay, as far as SPY goes, on the 1 hour time frame, the RSI is at 80.72. The different time frames from the 30-minute, the 2 hour, the 4 hour, and etc. are showing signs of exhaustion and the market being overextended. For that reason, I'm leaning in the direction of the market cooling off soon. We could get one more pump thanks to the Apple event and like the Joe Biden sign, just one final last pump before the market starts actually downtrending, or it could just start downtrending from here. It's got to be one of those two. I'm going to lean in the direction of the market maybe starting to cool off and get a very healthy pullback. Not saying it's going to be a crash, just a very healthy technical pullback because we're about to get a bearish cross in the PPO. For the first 30 minutes, the market is going to be very volatile because of the data, so be ready for that. But I'm still leaning a little bit more in favor of the bears. I think it's very likely that if SPY breaks 427.5, we're going to see a retest of the 426 to 425 zone. And if that fails us, we could go even lower than that into the lower 420s, but I'm not going to talk about that yet. I'm just leaning more towards a 425 retest. If we're bullish, it has to break the high of the day and hold it from Friday. If it breaks that and holds that, we could get closer to 430. I'm leaning more in the direction of us either getting a final pump and then selling off, or if we just start selling off though, based off the technicals on the other stocks and based off the buy the rumor, sell the news historical data. For Tesla, if we turn bullish, it needs to break and hold 217 to 217.83. Break and hold 217.83. in a very strong manner with a very strong confirmation candle off some bullish news, and Tesla can make its way up to 220. If we're bearish on Tesla, it's going to come all the way down to 212.5. If that fails, 209 to 210 will come, followed by 207, then 205. Those are some very important zones. There's this gap down here. And if anything, if it fails at this imbalance level, right, this imbalance is where Tesla is going to be attracted to if it comes down. If that fails, it's going to come all the way down to this gap area around the 207s. That's going to be the next zone I'd watch for if 210 fails. Now, as for Tesla, let me just note that from a technical standpoint, it's looking a little bit more bearish after this price action that we saw on Friday. Might try to get a bounce in the morning, then just start continuing to sell off. And even though I brought up both the bullish and bearish cases, I'm leaning a little bit more bearish. And I think the odds favor either a tiny little bounce followed by it continuing to sell off. And it's likely going to retest this imbalance zone as the volume algos are going to try to match this flow. And they're going to try to bring this thing down to match this right here in this 209 to 210 area. So that's what I'm watching for on Tesla. For the QQQ for the week, there's a bearish divergence clearly on the 1 hour time frame. We need confirmation of it playing out, yet there's no guarantee it's going to play out just yet. If it does play out, okay, we're going to be watching. Well, we already have this divergence right here anyways, but anyways, we need to see it break below 353. If that happens, we're going to be watching 350. If that happens, if you actually see the QQQ break below 353, most of the market's likely going to start coming down as the Nasdaq drops. The Nasdaq also has a bearish divergence. To be bullish, you have to break the high of the day from Friday, and we could see a retest of 358 if it does break that. But I'm not leaning in that direction. As you guys know, I think it's more likely that the market either pumps a tiny bit more, then it starts dropping, or we just downtrend and we see the QQQ get closer to 350 sometime this week. If the HYG does end up losing this momentum as it's very close to doing so, this could slow down the markets too because of the bonds traders. As far as NEO goes, I'm expecting some volatility. The downward pressure of the market may slow it down. And we're going to see a big move after earnings as we approach earnings too. For the Nasdaq, there's a bearish divergence developing. This is likely going to try to sell off a little bit, but we need confirmation first. If it breaks below 13,250 and holds and it just like continues to break down below it, you have to watch the candlesticks for confirmation, right? It's not just about like, does it break and hold for an extended period of time? That's part of it, but it's also going to be mattering more based off the candles, the price action, the volume, all those things are going to matter. So you have to watch that in real time. A clean break below 13,250, and if it just remains very choppy and weak there, I'm going to be expecting it to fill this gap all the way down to the 13,100, then 13,000 flats, which could drag down the tech sector. If it's bullish, it needs to break and hold. It has to basically hold above where it's currently or where it was at the high of the day from Friday. If it does do that, then it could get closer to about 13,300, then potentially 13,400 first before the cool off comes. But I'm leaning more bearish though, based off how overextended it is. I mean, the RSI is at 73.5. Either one last push and then it starts cooling off, or it just starts cooling off to retest the 50 EMA is what I'm leaning for on the Nasdaq. On SPX, there's a big gap down below at this 42.23 area. If it breaks below 42.50 and holds, and it just fails to like hold it and the candles look more bearish, it is most likely going to come down to fill this gap. And if that happens, the Nasdaq is likely going to be correlated with it alongside SPY and QQQ because SPY is tracking this, and then it's going to lead to the whole market getting a very maybe somewhat significant sell-off. I'm not saying it's going to be like horrible or like bloody red. I'm simply stating that's a healthy pullback, completely healthy. Then we're going to be watching how the market responds to support. All right, so that's what my point is. The dollar is up to 104. If the dollar keeps pumping and holding at these levels, this could be bearish for the markets. If Coinbase is bullish, it needs to break and hold above 66 basically. If we're bearish, it's going to retest 62.95. If that fails, 60.41. I believe it's more likely that's going to try to bounce a little bit in the morning, then it's just start downtrending. And it's likely going to make its way down to 62.95, if not even lower than that as time goes on because of this bearish crossword over here. For Apple, there's a big event coming, so this is a little bit harder to predict because of the event. I don't know if Apple's going to try to get like a spike in the morning first before the event and then it cools off, or if it just starts selling off in the morning. Typically, during events like this, if we are pumping this hard approaching them, and we have this bearish divergence right here, and you could also see it right here. So right here, there's a bearish divergence on the RSI and the signal line where the histograms are on the PPO. Those tell us that the odds favor Apple eventually getting a sell-off back down to 180 flat, 179.37, then 177.52. I'm leaning more in that direction, but once again, we have to wait for confirmation. If it breaks below the 50 EMA, it's going to come all the way down to 177.5. We need confirmation first because a big event is coming, and that's very important to look at. The video may retest 400, but it may start to downtrend more if the market starts cooling off, which I believe it will. And then if that's the case, don't forget the support zones on NVIDIA. They're all going to be very significant, very important. If NVIDIA sells off and it breaks below the 50 and fails to hold it, watch 392, 390, this 380, 385 area, 382, followed by 377.8, and then 375 are some supports. I'm going to be watching all of those as supports. It could come all the way back down to the high 370s if the market gets a significant sell-off, but it may kind of like touch this trend line first, very close to 400 first before it does that. So watch that very carefully. For Google, if Google gets a bounce, we could see it try to make its way up to 127. If it's bearish, it's going to come all the way down to about 122. So I'm leaning in the direction of Google trying to push up in the very beginning of the day, then start selling off. Uh, if if it fails to hold the 50 at 124.61, we could be expecting 122.89 followed by 120.75 later on. It's really possible, especially if the market cools off. We're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO, where I think we just barely got it. So the odds are favoring downside for it, especially in the pre-market. Just be open-minded and watch the 50 EMA carefully on this. I am leaning more in favor of the bears for the time being, but I'm always open-minded depending on confirmation. For Amazon, if we're bullish, we need to see it hold above 125, and then if it breaks above that and holds it, 126.39 followed by 128 could come. If we're bearish on Amazon, you're going to be watching support at the 122.74 area. If that fails, we could see a 120 retest. I'm leaning in the direction of a 50 EMA retest at 122.74. That fails, 120 could come pretty quickly. I'm leaning more in that direction, but I'm always going to be open-minded for confirmation, so make sure you watch the 50 carefully. For Meta, if we're bullish, 275, then 277.5, then 280 could be the bullish targets to look out for. If we're bearish, we're going to be watching for 270, 269.26, followed by 265, and then 262.67. Looking at the crossover right here, there is a potential bearish divergence that developed. There is one right over here on Meta too, and if we get confirmation of this rejection, watch the 50 EMA as support. If that breaks, we could be on our way to get close to 260. There is a bearish divergence on both the PPOs of the MACD and the RSI. And that tells me that the odds favor downside for Meta. We need confirmation first. We need to see if it could hold 270 first. And then we'll just wait and see how it moves from there. If 170 fails us, watch 269, then potentially 265, and if not 260. But if anything, the odds are favoring it cooling off just a bit in a healthy manner. And the Nasdaq is likely going to dictate that type of price action. Now, in the morning, we might not get the sell-off immediately for the markets because of the PMI report. I don't know what that's going to give us, so I'm going to be open-minded, which is why I broke down both bullish and bearish cases for most of these tickers. But I'm leaning more in the direction of us eventually getting some kind of pullback. Maybe it takes maybe it happens as soon as Monday. Maybe it can take like an extra day or so, but it's most likely going to happen eventually. I'm going to be watching for that 425 retest on SPY and QQQ to retest 350. And Tesla to eventually make its way down to the 210 to 209 area and eventually possibly break a little bit below that, but we'll be watching support first beforehand. So I will give you guys an update tomorrow in the morning. I wanted to keep this video very short, so I want the best for everyone. Please remain calm, cool, and collected. Do what you have to do, and I want the best for all of you, okay? So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the weekend. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget about my merch shop. If you want to buy a t-shirt or a hoodie or something like that that says "to the moon," it's your choice. If not, completely fine with me as well. I really appreciate all of you. Tesla in the market to the moon as the long term is very bright. And peace out.